Hello, everyone, and welcome to the She Heals the World talk show. My name is Izzy Seedon, and I'm delighted that we have Melanie Hunter with us today. So, Mel is a certified nutrition consultant, breathwork instructor, and the founder of Alii Supplements, which is a brand dedicated to empowering women with the knowledge and tools to support their health. After spending a decade on birth control and struggling with unexplained fatigue, mood swings, and gut issues, Mel discovered the impact of drug-induced nutrient depletion. So her journey led her back to school, and she uncovered the critical link between hormonal contraceptives and essential nutrient loss, which is actually an issue, as you can imagine, affecting millions of women. So using this knowledge, she was determined to bridge the gap in women's health, and she created Your Birth Control's Best Friend, which is a science-based supplement designed to replenish nutrients, support gut health, and help women feel like themselves again. So through the Alii Supplements, she's on a mission to educate and empower women so that they can make informed choices about their well-being. And when she's not researching, formulating, or sharing her expertise, Mel is a dedicated mother to 3 boys, an advanced meditator, and an advocate for holistic wellness. And she believes that every woman deserves to feel her best body, mind, and soul. So incredible work, Mel, that you're doing. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to hear more of your story. But would you be able to, introduce yourself in terms of sharing about this journey that you've been on to create sort of your supplement range and about sort of their very specialness of Alii Supplements. So please tell us more about you.
Thank you so much for having me, first and foremost. I always introduce myself as a mother first because I feel like that has been my most important work up to date. And I have 3 boys, and that's been a journey in itself. But I actually first went back to school to become a holistic nutrition consultant because my middle son when he was a baby, was having some chronic health issues, and Western medicine was not helping me get to the bottom of them. And so I embarked on a 2-year program to become a holistic certified nutrition consultant. And at the time, my husband was like, if you never use it, if you only use it to help our family, like it would be beneficial, right? And so it was during this 2-year program that I learned about drug-induced nutrient depletion, and specifically about birth control. And it was such an eye-opening thing for me because I personally I went on birth control when I was 19 years old, and I know women go on it for a variety of different reasons. I did go on it for contraceptive, and I stayed on some form of it for like a decade. I mean, not even like a decade, like an absolute solid decade. And in between my children, after you have a baby, they advise you to go back on some kind of birth control so that you don't have back children. And so I also went on, some form in between. But my 20s were an interesting time because my health journey kind of started during these years. And there was a period of time when I was in my mid-20s and I was always sick. My dad was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like, I was exercising, I was eating well, and I was learning so much. And I just, couldn't seem to catch a break. And it was also during my 20s that I developed anxiety. And it was during this time that I diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. And fatigue. I was like, my husband and I'd be like, why? I don't know. Why am I so tired? This was before kids, that's a whole nother different tired after kids. But anyhow, so when I learned about drug-induced nutrient depletion, it was like, oh, wow, like this makes sense for me. And so I started researching actually what nutrients are depleted by birth control. And there's a lot, it's vitamin B2 and B6 and B12 and folate and magnesium. And some studies show vitamin D and zinc and selenium and there's more. And it's like, oh my gosh. So, maybe, in the beginning for the first couple of years, maybe it was fine being on birth control and I had maybe some side effects from the hormones themselves, but you fast forward, I was on it for years. At this point, I'm in my 20s, early 20s, I'm in college. I'm doing the best I can as far as food, but probably not great. So I'm probably depleted from my diet. Stress further depletes you, which, studying for exams is a whole other thing. And then you add birth control to that. And I definitely ended up depleted. And so at the time that I realized this, I still had my middle son, who's now 10, was maybe like 1 or 2 at the time. And so I really didn't have the bandwidth to create at that time. But once I have 3 boys. And so once they were all in school, I felt like this overwhelming feel. Sorry, there's an airplane above me. It's the bad part about being outside. This pull at my heart that there was something that I was not even being called to is what it is. I was being called to do something outside of mothering, which is an amazing job in itself. And so I just like felt this pull so much. And so I kept asking the question, like, what is it? Like, show me what it is. And as you mentioned, I'm very into meditation. I got very much into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work years ago. I've been meditating for a decade, but I started really doing his work I don't know, 5 years ago. And it was during a deep meditation that I like had these downloads, essentially, I will call them, where I felt I came out of this meditation and I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a supplement
Mhm.
that, addresses specifically for women on birth control, that's replenishing these nutrients, because I don't believe that this should be our journey. And I think as women, oftentimes we think things are normal and we kind of suffer through things. And I think that I'd love to change the conversation, and if nothing else, educate women so that they know this is happening, because it's an issue that, so many people, I didn't know it was happening to
Mhm.
me. And so many women don't know what's happening to them. They just think, it's just a normal part, a normal side effect, if you will, of being on birth control. And I don't think it needs to be that way. And so yeah, I created Alii Supplements. This is the pack, and it's less than a year old, so we're still in our infancy. And I'm learning a lot, but I'm really on a mission to educate and empower women so that they have
Mhm.
choices to support their bodies during this phase of life, because, that's very much what it is. It's a
Yeah,
phase of life. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's so nice to have a brand that is, as you said, it does empower women, it does educate women, and, gives them options, because women will be on birth control for so many different reasons, but um, the impact of it is something that probably a lot of women are not aware of, and therefore, what can they do to have solutions for this sort of thing, where don't want to sort of sacrifice their health.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should have to sacrifice our health, regardless of your reasons for going on birth control, right? And I think it's another thing in the health world. I feel like sometimes people want to shame people in general for whatever decision they make. And like, if I were 19, I would still take birth control, knowing what I know today. I don't want to shame anybody. I think we as women get to choose what's best for our bodies. And I think that that's really important, that we are able to step into that without any shame or judgment from each other, or upon ourselves. Like, we're hard enough on ourselves. And, if you choose that, then, this is an easy, convenient way to support your body through those years.
So, I mean, it's so interesting because you've created a product, and obviously that as a specific business has its whole realm of considerations and challenges to get something to market, branding, regulations, all that sort of stuff. I mean, tell me about how has that been? Like, what sort of challenges have you faced with this?
So many. It's been such a humbling experience. I'm married to an entrepreneur, and I call him a serial entrepreneur because he just is. Like, that's just in him. And I do not consider myself that at all. I'm a holistic nutrition consultant who became an entrepreneur because I'm really passionate about this issue. And so, I mean, literally from the point of like formulation, like I developed a formula, and it got tweaked when I worked, with a scientist. But essentially, finding a manufacturer, there was a point where I was like, I'm not even going to make this, because I was having a hard time finding a manufacturing company that like had the high quality standards that I absolutely required. And so at one point, I'm like, this just isn't going to work, and I'm not going to make something that I personally would not take and give to my children. Like, that's just how I do life, right? It has to be in alignment. And so thankfully, my husband is an entrepreneur, so he has just connections in different things. And so he was able to connect me with the company that we ended up using for manufacturing, who has very high quality standards and a ton of certified in everything essentially that I was looking for. But I mean, from the get-go, it's like finding a manufacturer that, is acceptable. And then you have, oh my gosh, branding is a whole thing. Naming it, I had a different name, and became an issue with trademarking it. And it's been literally, I think that I was telling someone recently at a dinner party, I'm like, I think all I've done so far is figure out problems and what I'm doing wrong. And they were like, that's pretty much business. And I
Yeah.
think that is. But yeah, I realized, my website wasn't working. It wasn't portraying enough information. And it's been one thing after another that I'm learning that I'm not doing well. And And that's okay. Like I said, it's been humbling. It's been a very much a learning experience, and I'm still figuring out what I'm doing wrong. But the one thing I got right was like it's a really amazing formula. And so I still like my passion and that mission part has not changed. And so the foundation of it is really good. But there's a lot of details in business that I did not realize would be so tricky to navigate.
Yeah. And it's an interesting point around you struggling to find a manufacturer that aligns with the standards, because I'm guessing that means a lot of supplements are maybe manufactured to lower standards that we're maybe unaware of.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that most supplements, most ingredients come from outside of the country, and that is just a fact. And so at one point I was like, I'm only using ingredients that are sourced in the United States. Well, literally you can't make a product that way
Mm.
today. So then I was like, okay, I need to then know where they come, and I need testing of everything that I would care about, heavy metals and pesticides and bacteria and fungus, and the list goes on and on. And so I need to make sure that the facility is doing that to the highest degree. And so yeah, I mean, there's testing is important. And so I chose a manufacturing company that tests the ingredients at 3 different times during the process: when they first get them, when they start first getting mixed, and at the end product. And they're testing for all of these things with all of these contaminants, which is so important to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a really interesting process of, yeah, finding someone that has high enough standards that I would utilize. And like I said, if I won't take it and I won't give it to my kids, I would never put it out on the market. It's just not how I work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's such a nice value. And I think it is the hallmark of that sort of business that is values driven. And when we've got this whole She Heals the World of beautiful heart-centered entrepreneurs. So it's so nice to hear that actually when it comes to just defining, if I wouldn't give it to my children, I wouldn't take it, then it's a no, which it's a really nice brand value.
I feel like I feel like for me, I live very much like my entire life has to live in alignment. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't feel aligned, then it's just a hard no matter what it is. So
Yeah. Amazing. So we can trust the Alii Supplements.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I give it to I mean, it's funny because it's like it's very much marketed for women on birth control because it's specific to their needs. However, anyone can take it. I've given it to my son. It's, there's nothing that's going to influence hormones in a negative way. And yeah, I've given it to my own son. And so, yeah, I can vouch for that.
So when, as you said, it's sort of been this journey of learning with problem or challenge after challenge. How have you kept going? It's just that sort of love of the product. Do you have any tips for people that are facing similar things where it just one thing after another? How did you keep yourself being able to bring it to market?
I think for me, it's 2 things. I think one is having a mission you believe in is so important because for me, like there'll be times where I'm just like, I don't know, like I don't know how to do this, right? Like I know there's a need for it, but that doesn't mean that I know how to, spread brand awareness and get people to know about it. I don't know how to do these things. And then I feel like, God or the universe or whatever you want to call it works in such beautiful ways that I will hit these points and then I'll have somebody email me or send us a message on Instagram saying like, thank you, your supplement, made such an impact in my life. I'm feeling better. And I'm like, so for me, I think it's really like following breadcrumbs. I think that the universe, we are in co-collaboration with the universe, right? And if you pay attention, there are always breadcrumbs that are kind of leading you to your next step. And I think that as our human nature is, I want to know everything. I want to know it's going to work. I want to know how to do it. I want to know all those things. Well, that's not what we get. But what I do get is like these tidbits, like somebody will come to me and tell me like, hey, have you checked out, I don't know, like, hiring an agency overseas for this, right? Or using something called Home from College is a really great platform or some kind of tidbit. And so I feel like I keep following these breadcrumbs, knowing that my mission for one is worth the struggle. And 2, that I really believe that this was given to me by the universe, that we are in co-collaboration and it is for the best of, everyone involved. And so, the universe is supporting me along the way. And so I have to just, wait for the next breadcrumb kind of.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, people might not recognize that those breadcrumbs are really they are the stepping stones, and people may be expecting a whole loaf of bread, but
Yeah, totally. Because it would be easier, it'd be easier if we had like a whole recipe and this is what you do to make
yeah.
it work, and it's hard. And I think you have to like really go back to why are you doing this and know, yeah, because the loaf of bread hasn't appeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to be grateful for the breadcrumbs, because then
Yeah.
enough breadcrumbs, we've got a loaf.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. And I think, someday maybe I'll have a loaf. Right now I still have breadcrumbs, but that's okay. Enough. And it shows me what my next step is. And I
Yeah.
think that, I think that's life too. I think as I've gotten older, I realized, so many times I want to have everything figured out, and that's not it, right? It's like the universe will give us the next step when it's time for that, or provides us what we need, not necessarily what we think we want.
So with this journey, obviously having these successes where someone's like, actually, thank you so much for the product, and getting it out there, which is huge in itself, just the whole process of bringing a product to market. Are there any tips that you can share with people, things that you've learned along the way that have looking back, you're like, this is how I do it again, for our fellow aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah. That's an interesting question, because I think that you're going to face obstacles, and your obstacles are likely going to be different than my obstacles. And I think that the number one thing is just like developing grit, knowing like everything is figure outable, and you will figure it out, and it may not be clear, but there's an answer, a solution for everything. And we don't have to know everything. Like I am very much a friend, like I don't know more things than I do. What I do know is I know the formula, I know the nutrients, I know like the holistic health side of it. As far as like the business part of it, I don't know most of it, but I'm learning. And I think that, I think that there's no shame in that. I think that sometimes we think when we're starting out that everybody has it figured out, and that's not true. Like I said, I'm married to an entrepreneur who's had multiple businesses, and they each face different obstacles. And so the solutions are always different. But the fact is, you try something, and if it doesn't work, you navigate to the next option and you try that. Right. And I think that there's just needs to be grace and knowing that it's a windy road. It's not a straightforward journey. And that's okay, right? It's just knowing that you're going to figure it out. It just might take longer, look different than you thought it would.
So being married to a serial entrepreneur, I guess that's been quite helpful as, someone that can support you on this journey. Have you sort of worked with, I don't know, coaches, or is your husband sort of taking that role? What sort of benefits, I guess, from that sort of mentorship support has that helped, basically? Yeah.
Yeah. I think 100% it helps, because, our businesses are different. He's never created a supplement, but he's got so much wisdom in general in business. I also think that the more people that you can surround yourself that are having businesses, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but you realize that often the struggles are very similar. And so, what my husband Chris may not be able to answer, maybe he knows someone who can, or someone that I can talk to. And so I think that, and also it's so helpful, because when you talk to entrepreneurs, you realize like we're all figuring something out, and we're all struggling with some piece of it. And it's just the normal journey. And so I think normalizing it and knowing like, and feeling like you're not alone in your struggle is so important. So I would say community is really important. And, I'm lucky to have married an entrepreneur, but if that's not you, I would say seek out a group of people that can become part of your community, where you can bounce ideas off of, or just have someone to hold space for you when you're struggling, and can remind you that you're going to figure that out, and that you're not alone in your problems. Because I think that it can be a very lonely road. And there's a lot to figure out. And I think it takes a certain amount of grit to continue. And I think community really helps with that.
And what about being a mother of 3 boys? I mean, how do you have time to do all this? I mean, do you have any strategies for like time management and juggling these 2 roles?
I think that it's so It's such an interesting question. There's never, I hate saying this because I really try hard to have a zero lack mentality. And so I work on changing this belief, but there's never really enough time.
Yeah.
I could work all day and I don't have it. Like, and my motherhood is so important to me and showing up in a way that I want to show up. Like, I really want to be there for them and I want to be consciously present with them. And so there's never enough time. And, I realize, I think that what I've accepted for myself is this is where I'm at in my life. That is my number one priority. My family is my number one priority. And secondly is this. And so it's going to be a slower process than maybe if I was in a different phase of life. And I'm okay with that. I think that, I'm still fulfilling my mission just at a different pace maybe than somebody else. And I still, self-care is important. So I still need to take care of myself. I wake up early to have time to meditate before that they are up and have my, my alone time because that's the only time I get that. And there's plenty of days that I don't manage to shower or put on makeup because it just isn't that important. And I just didn't get to it. And has to be a lot of grace, I'd say, with, you're going to get done what you can get done. And the rest you just have to realize like some things are going to have to go by the wayside and that's going to have to be okay.
Yeah. And I think when you understand, I guess, okay, well, this is my priority. I want to make sure I'm doing this. And just accepting that, the different levels of growth that you can achieve based on that time. And then when you know that, then I guess it's easier to live it because you're like, well, actually, based on my time, I've probably done really well. And it's just maybe that flexing idea of making things fit into your life rather than trying to throw everything at it. And then I guess it manages the expectations better, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think, I try to live very much with intention, right? And so very purposeful. And so knowing that my family is first, like it allows me to not beat myself up too much when it comes to my business because, I could very much spend a lot more hours working and there's always a cost to that, right? And so, for me, it's like I'm okay with that road because that's what I choose right now. And that's what makes the most sense in this phase of my life. And yeah, I think we have to offer ourselves grace when we can.
Yeah. So you said, did the supplement launch a year ago? So is it just been a year?
Not even a year. It's been, we launched in May, so it has not even been a year.
Gosh.
So we're still in our infancy and still learning a whole lot.
So still in its infancy. So how do you see obviously growing this infant into an adult? Like what's the journey you want Alii Supplements to take?
Well, it's interesting you say that because what I really want is to launch my next product because, birth control is one of the worst offenders when it comes to drug-induced nutrient depletion, but it's certainly not the only one. And so I have a formula that's ready, that's for your antidepressant's best friend. And it's like, I get super excited about this, solving the problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I really want to launch this product. And I have been told by people that I very much respect in the business world that I will essentially fall on my face if I do. Because, we are a self-funded startup. And so, that is a whole nother beast on its own because everything seems to cost money and, in marketing and building brand awareness. And so essentially they're like, until you really have an established product with the current one I have, they're like, you're going to run out of money and not be able to successfully, promote both, which I hate the word promote because it sounds so salesy.
Yeah.
However, it's still, it's creating awareness around the problem and the solution. And so there's educational pieces to that. And I find that for my product specifically, like no one's talked about drug-induced nutrient depletion in my knowledge prior to this. And so that alone is taking a lot of education and resources just for people to even know that this is an issue, right?
Mhm.
And so, all of that takes time and resources and money. And so we do have a limited amount of funding. And so I think that's been the most challenging thing for me is just, I think that there's people that I want to help with the next formula. And I'm like, to rein myself in or else, I will essentially have no ability to help anybody because I won't have a company. But what I do see in the future at some point on this, trajectory is having other products for other pharmaceuticals that do the same thing essentially. And so that people can know that if you're on an antidepressant, same thing, you're going to deplete, B vitamins that you really need for neurotransmitters to be made, for serotonin. And so it becomes kind of a cycle where if you're depleting the nutrients that you need for your mental health, but you're taking something for your mental health, it's really hard to get out of that cycle. And so I hope to do that one next. And there's a whole line of other possible options, but we'll see.
See, that's really, really helpful for people to understand, because I think it's often the case where obviously when you've got a certain amount of funding, it's quite obvious where you sort of direct it. But that whole principle in terms of actually focusing on one thing, nailing that, getting that right, getting that successful before doing the next thing, which may not, I guess it's similar maybe with coaching, that people launch different offers at the same time. And when actually it's probably really valuable to hear the fact that it probably would take a really big team, a lot of money, a lot of bandwidth to do that, and most of us probably don't have those resources when we are more of that solopreneur type. So that's actually really insightful in the fact that this is the advice you've been given, to the strategy you're going to take. Actually, stick with that one before going on to the others, because as I can imagine being really frustrating, because there's such a big need in the market, but you're putting the business first so that you can then help more people rather than not being able to help anyone.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's like, it's something that I've been working on this for, whatever, a year and a half or whatever it is. And so for me, I'm like, okay, it's almost like everyone knows this and I can move on to the next thing. But in all reality, that's not it. We know something really well and are really passionate about it. Doesn't mean, like the community isn't. And maybe, I think that's like an interesting thing in general, like do one thing really well instead of trying to do so many things, thinking that we need to offer so many things. My husband was recently saying that he was at a conference and he said, like, that's one of the biggest mistakes that young companies make, is trying to do multiple products at once and not really, finding their one really good one. So I think that's a common issue.
Yeah. Well, and your ones do sound really good. So
Thank you. I'm so excited about it. I'm like, but I think, a good time, hopefully, there's enough women on birth control that also need this product, and I don't want to skip over them either. I would love to be able to help everyone, but, one thing at a time.
And out of interest, I mean, what strategies have you used to get the product out there? Is it sort of, I don't know, social media or education? That's what I guess business strategy have you found to get it into people's hands?
Yeah. It's been a learning curve for sure. Social media is the one thing I think that we have done well. And so through Instagram, TikTok has been a whole nother beast, if you will. Amazing. But, we went on TikTok Shop and then they kicked us off thinking that we were a weight loss drug, which we are not. And then we went back on and we got kicked off again for reasons I'm not sure. And then we got back on. So that's been, a very interesting thing, but we're really trying to build out affiliate teams on TikTok Shop and through Shopify. We've also used interns for brand ambassadors, which is also kind of interesting because, we can't be throwing events ourselves because we don't have the budget. So it's really finding opportunities at colleges, because for me, that's when I went on birth control. I was in college. And so for me, I'm like, gosh, if my younger self had known, maybe at the time I wouldn't have bought a vitamin. I don't know. I didn't take any vitamins at that time. Maybe I would have chose to do nothing with it, but I would have at least known that this was something that I would need to do at some point to support my body. And I would have understood that the side effects I was having were partially caused by that. Right. So anyway, it's been very much important to me to educate college women. So we've done some of that. We're just really getting into doing ads, and email marketing is kind of still new to us. Our blog is new. Yeah, it's been, an interesting journey of finding what works and what doesn't, and who does this resonate with? Because a lot of the times the girls that really need it are girls that maybe don't care or know that they need it, right? And so when you think about like teenage girls, like their diets are generally not optimal, and they're going through a time where they're growing, and so they're their nutritional needs are actually higher. And then you put birth control in there, which you're depleting. And of course, we're going to end up with depleted young women with, anxiety and gut issues and all of these things. However, it's an interesting thing because that's actually really marketing to their mothers. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so there's an educational piece there. And so we're really just trying to figure out, who is even getting our message and, who it's resonating with. And so it's in itself is a journey.
Yeah. So I guess it's experimenting, the different strategies, different platforms, different types of events, and targeting different people to then, work out the formula that is, the one that probably, I guess, drives the most revenue through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And honestly, college girls are not really a great place for me to invest in. I'm doing it anyway because I care, because it's like very personal to me. But college age girls don't have money to buy a subscription
Yeah.
for vitamins typically, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm still doing it, like I said, because I care. But I think, these are also girls that have really, most of them haven't taken any supplements and are, not that worried about their health right now, because in your 20s you can get away with quite a bit before you feel it. Yeah. So, but there's also women, up to age 40 and on that are still on birth control. And so there's a very big range. It's just, figuring out what messaging is getting to who needs it. And yeah, we're still
Yeah.
learning.
Oh, no, I love it. I love you talking to someone who is on that journey because, it seems, well, obviously it seems quite daunting to do products. It's a lot harder, I'd say, than maybe like the online ones because you have to invest a lot of money in the manufacturing, the branding to get it all right. But it's sort of inspiring in the sense that everyone's going through the same thing and has to experiment, has to learn. It's not just that sort of it's not that easy, but at the same time it's working, you're getting good feedback. So it's nice to hear actually that the small entrepreneurs can go into this realm as well.
Yeah. No, I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, there's so much power in sharing our stories and knowing, like, just because you don't put something out there and it's immediately successful, which I think that we think it's going to be
Yeah.
because, oh, it's like, okay, well, everyone's just going to get it right away. And like, that has not been my journey by any means, right? There's been a huge educational piece. It's like really been a lot of, and I still know that it's a really great product that is needed. And I have so many amazing testimonials that it's going to work. It's just much slower, windier journey than I had, anticipated. But I think that that's a lot of people's story.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to hear yours, and really really appreciate sort of the time that you've been able to share that with us. So I wanted to know, sort of, our signature She Heals the World question is, what does healing the world mean to you?
To me, healing the world means healing yourself. I think that as a woman, but for anyone, really, it's getting to know ourselves, which we're not necessarily taught, I think, from a young age, and learning to accept and love all the parts of yourself. And if you come from that place, if you are always coming from that place of love, then that's what you're putting out in the world. And so I don't think that we need to heal each other. I think we need to work on healing ourselves, and then the world will be healed.
Perfect, and totally agree. Definitely, and speaking of, I mean, how can we support your work? And by doing so, maybe support others around us who might be on birth control. Tell us more about how we can find out more.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are on birth control or if you know someone on birth control, please share this, because I think the biggest part is education, right? Like, I think that every woman should at least know that birth control is depleting nutrients and disrupting your microbiome. If you choose to do something about it, or if you don't, that's up to you, right? But like, every woman should know that. So please do share the information. You can find Alii on social media at Alii, Alii Supplements, it's singular. It's also, our website is at the same thing, Alii, Alii Supplements. And then you can also follow me if you want. I have a Holistic Health with Mel Instagram account that I just share random things. And anyway, if you want to follow me there. But I would love, any comments, feedback, questions, please reach out. I'm very accessible that way, just through Instagram and whatnot. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, I'm sure all of us will be following your work and sharing your work because there's a big market, lots of people on birth control that need to understand this, really, really critical piece in terms of how it can be impacting them, because it might be the missing link for a lot of things, as you said, that could be impacting their health and things like that. So I'm so appreciative of the work that you're doing, which is so educational and so empowering. So very, very much grateful to you and creating this product. So thank you, and thank you for your time as well. And thank you everyone as well who's joined us for the She Heals the World talk show. We will be having lots more inspirational women like Mel joining us. So stay tuned and take care, and of course, stay inspired. And thank you so much, Mel, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the She Heals the World talk show. To find out how you can grow your purpose-driven business, visit us at www.shehealstheworld.com.